On day 22, Day sat in his expanded camp and looked at everything he had built. His shelter was now a proper structure with multiple rooms, one for sleeping, one for storing food, and one for working on tools and projects. The walls were reinforced with clay he had found near the river. The roof was triple-layered to withstand heavy storms. His food storage area contained smoked meat, dried fruits, preserved vegetables, and containers of clean water. He had enough supplies to last 6 months, not just 30 days. He had created pottery from river clay and fired it in his kiln. He had woven baskets from reeds. He even had a small garden growing near the camp where he cultivated edible plants. The perimeter defenses were strong. Traps surrounded the area in strategic locations. Warning systems would alert him to any large creatures approaching. And the Ripper Pack patrolled the territory regularly, keeping tunnelers at bay. Day had built more than a survival camp. He had built a home. He pulled out his emergency beacon, the device meant for extraction if a student was in danger. He had not touched it since landing. Now he pressed the button. The device beeped and sent a signal to the Academy's monitoring station. In the station, alarms blared immediately. Instructors rushed to their screens looking for signs of disaster. Emergency beacon activated. Someone shouted, "Student Kang Day. Check his vital signs," Vel ordered, rushing to the screen. "Is he injured?" The medical readout showed normal heart rate, normal breathing, no signs of distress. "He appears healthy," an instructor reported, confused. On the screen, they watched Day calmly sitting by his fire. Tay lay next to him, and several other Rippers lounged nearby. There was no emergency. "No danger. What is he doing?" Administrator Hana asked. Day looked directly at the sky, knowing the satellites were watching. He smiled and spoke clearly. "I have completed the exam objectives. I am requesting early extraction for review." The monitoring station fell silent. "He wants to finish early?" Someone whispered. That is not how this works. "The exam is 30 days, another instructor said. "He has only been there 22 days. Vel stared at the screen. A slow smile spread across his reptilian face. "The exam requirements are to build shelter, find food, and avoid predators for 30 days. There is no rule that says students cannot finish early if they have exceeded all objectives. But no one has ever tried," an instructor protested. "No one has ever had reason to try," Vel countered. He turned to Hana. "I am going down there myself. I want to see this with my own eyes." 2 hours later, an extraction ship descended from orbit. It landed in a clearing near Day's camp, engines whining as it settled. The boarding ramp lowered. Tay immediately positioned himself between the ship and Day, growling. The entire pack formed a defensive circle. They saw the ship as a threat to their human. "It is okay," Day told them, using both human words and Ripper vocalizations. "These are friends. No danger." Tay huffed skeptically but relaxed slightly. The extraction team cautiously emerged from the ship, wearing full protective gear. They carried stun weapons ready for Ripper attacks. They stopped dead when they saw the scene before them. Day sat calmly by his fire, surrounded by 7 Rippers. The creatures were not attacking. They were simply watching the newcomers with alert but non-aggressive curiosity. 2 juveniles peeked out from behind the adults, their eyes bright with interest. Instructor Vel was the last to exit the ship. His 6 arms hung at his sides, weapons holstered. He looked around the camp slowly, taking in every detail. "Student Kang Day," he said formally. "You activated your emergency beacon." "Yes, sir," Day replied, standing. Tay stood with him, a towering presence at his shoulder. "I completed the exam objectives and am requesting evaluation. The exam is for 30 days. The requirements are to build shelter, find food, and avoid predators," Day corrected politely. "There is no requirement to wait 30 days if those objectives are met." Vel's eyes narrowed. "Show me." Day gestured to his camp. "My shelter is weatherproof and expandable. It has multiple rooms and will last for years, not days." He pointed to the storage area. "I have enough food preserved to sustain me for 6 months. I used hunting, trapping, gathering, and cultivation techniques." "And the predators?" Vel asked, looking at the Rippers. "I did not avoid them," Day admitted. "I made a different choice. I understood them." One of the extraction team members spoke up nervously. "Sir, those Rippers could attack at any moment. We should stun them and extract the student immediately." Tay growled at the threatening tone. Day placed a hand on the big Ripper's shoulder. If you attack them, you will not succeed, Day said calmly. There are 7 adult rippers in this pack, plus 2 juveniles and 2 cubs. They know this territory perfectly. They have traps and defensive positions, and they will protect me because I am part of their pack. You are part of their pack, Vel repeated slowly. You, a human, are part of a ripper pack. Yes, sir. Vel walked closer despite the worried sounds from his team. Tay watched him carefully but did not attack. The instructor stopped a few meters away and studied the big ripper. I have studied these creatures for 15 years, Vel said. I believe them to be nothing more than aggressive apex predators. Mindless killing machines. They are highly intelligent social hunters, Dee said. They communicate with complex vocalizations. They have pack hierarchy, family bonds, and problem-solving abilities. They even use tools when shown how. To demonstrate, Day picked up a long stick and held it out to Tay. The big ripper took it gently in his jaws, walked to a nearby burrow, and used the stick to probe inside. He pulled out a small creature, caught it with his claws, and brought it back to Day as a gift. The extraction team stared in shock. They learn from observation, Dai continued. They adapt strategies, and they are capable of cooperation with other species. The real threat on this planet is not rippers. It is tunnelers. Day explained about the subterranean predators, the attacks, the battle 3 days ago. Vel listened intently, his mind clearly working through the implications. You worked together to defeat 3 tunnelers, Vel said. It was not a question. Yes, sir. The pack provides combat strength. I provide strategic thinking and trap design. Together we are stronger than either could be alone. One of the juveniles, Jiho, crept forward curiously. He sniffed at Vel's boots. The instructor froze. Do not move, an extraction team member warned, raising his stun weapon. No, Day shouted. He made a sharp sound in Ripper language. Jiho immediately retreated to his mother's side. Day turned to the team member. If you fire that weapon, the pack will defend themselves. People will die. Is that what you want? The team member lowered his weapon reluctantly. Vel held up a hand. Stand down. All of you. He looked at Day. You have truly accomplished something unprecedented here, but I need to see more. Show me your complete operation. For the next hour, Day gave Vel a tour. He showed the food storage, the water filtration system, the kiln and pottery, the traps and warning systems. He demonstrated his communication with the Rippers, showing how they responded to different calls. Vel met every member of the pack. Tay, the wise leader, Sora, the protective mother, Quan and Minji, the strong young adults, Bam and Hana, the experienced hunters, Chiho and Suho, the playful juveniles, even the 2 tiny cubs who were brave enough to sniff the strange 6-armed visitor. Finally, Vel stood at the edge of the camp and looked out over the territory. The forest stretched away in all directions, wild and beautiful. Smoke rose from Day's fire. Rippers lounged in the afternoon sun. It looked peaceful, natural. You have not just survived, Vel said quietly. You have colonized. You have integrated into the ecosystem. You have formed an alliance with creatures we thought were our enemies. Yes, sir, Day agreed. The Academy will need to study this, Vel continued. Everything we teach about survival on death worlds may be wrong. We focus on defense and avoidance. You have shown us cooperation and understanding. He turned to Day. I am giving you the highest marks possible. You have exceeded every objective of this exam. But I have a question, sir. Will you come back to the Academy, or do you want to stay here? Day looked at Tay, who was watching him with those intelligent amber eyes. He looked at the cubs playing near the fire. He looked at the camp he had built. Can I do both? Day asked. I want to finish my education. But this pack is my family now. I cannot abandon them. Vel's smile showed all his sharp teeth. I think we can arrange something. The Academy has much to learn from you and your pack. The extraction team returned to the ship, still shaking their heads in disbelief. Vel paused at the ramp and looked back at Day. You have changed everything, Student Kang Day. I hope you understand that. I just made some friends, sir, Day replied. Tay huffed in agreement and leaned against Day's side. The human scratched behind the Ripper's spines, and the big creature rumbled with contentment. As the ship lifted off, Day watched it go. Soon the rest of the students would finish their 30 days. They would have stories of survival and hardship. Day had a different story, a story of understanding, cooperation, and family, and it was only the beginning. Day 19 began with rain. heavy cold rain that turned the forest floor into mud. Day sat in his shelter, dry and comfortable, while the storm raged outside. His roof did not leak. His fire pit had a cover to keep the flames alive. His food stores were protected in waterproof containers he had woven from tree bark. He was in better condition now than when he had arrived. He had gained muscle from all the building and walking. His skin was tanned from the sun. His hands were rough but skilled. He looked like someone who belonged in this wilderness. Through the rain, Day heard a familiar sound. A huffing bark. He looked out and saw Tay standing at the edge of his camp, water streaming off his scales. "Come in," Day called, gesturing to the shelter. Tay ducked his head and squeezed into the shelter. He was too big to fit completely, but he managed to get his upper body inside. He shook himself, spraying water everywhere. Day laughed and wiped his face. "Thanks for that," he said. Tay made an apologetic rumble and settled down. His body heat filled the small space quickly. The two of them sat together, listening to the rain. Day had been thinking about something for days now. The tunnelers were the real threat on this planet, not the Rippers. The Academy had it all wrong. If students knew the truth, they could work with Rippers instead of running from them. "We should work together," Day said to Tay. "Officially, I mean. Your pack and me. We can protect this area better as a team." Tay tilted his head, listening. "I can make better defenses. Warning systems. Traps that work on tunnelers but not on you or your pack." Day scratched Tay's neck. "And you can teach me how to fight properly if I need to." Tay seemed to consider this. Then he made a low, agreeable rumble. "I will take that as a yes," Day said, smiling. When the rain stopped, they got to work. Day started by creating a perimeter around the den area. He used rocks to mark paths that were safe from tunneler attacks. The rock markers also helped the Rippers know where Day had set up traps. He dug several deep pits and covered them with branches and leaves. These were meant for tunnelers, which could not see well and relied on vibration to navigate. A Ripper, with its better senses, would smell or hear the trap and avoid it. Day also created warning systems. He hung pieces of metal from his survival pack on strings. When something large moved past them, they would clang together. Simple but effective. The pack watched him work with interest. The young adults, Quan and Minji, started helping. They used their powerful claws to dig pits faster than Day could alone. The juveniles, Jiho and Suho, brought rocks and sticks. Even Sora, the cautious mother, participated. She showed Day the trails that tunnelers used most often. Those were the best places for traps. Within 3 days, they had transformed the area around the den into a fortress. Any tunneler that approached would face multiple obstacles. The pack could defend their home much more easily now, but Day did not stop there. He began teaching the pack hunting techniques from Earth. He showed them how to herd prey into corners using coordinated movements. He demonstrated how to flush animals from hiding spots using noise and distraction. He even taught them a basic form of relay hunting, where one Ripper would chase prey until tired. Then another would take over. The pack already knew how to hunt, but Day's techniques added new options to their arsenal. Tay was especially quick to learn. The big Ripper could coordinate the others with just a few barks, combining their natural tactics with Day's human strategies. On day 23, they put everything to the test. Day was working on his camp when he heard the warning chimes ring. Something big was moving through the forest. Multiple somethings. He grabbed a wooden spear he had made and ran toward the den. The entire pack was already there, tense and ready. Tay stood at the front, his spines raised aggressively. 3 tunnelers emerged from the forest. Not 1. 3. They were massive, each one bigger than the tunneler the pack had fought before. Their armored shells were scarred from countless battles. These were old, experienced predators, and they were working together. They are hunting the pack, Day realized with horror. The tunnelers had learned to cooperate just like the Rippers. The lead tunneler roared, showing rows of grinding teeth. The other 2 spread out to flank the den entrance. They were trying to trap the pack inside. Tay barked orders. The pack split up, with the adults taking positions around the juveniles and cubs. Sora pulled her babies deeper into the den. Day's mind raced. 3 against 7 seemed like good odds, but the tunnelers were bigger and stronger. The pack would win eventually, but some of them would die unless they used the traps. "Tay," Day shouted. He made a series of sounds combining human words with Ripper vocalizations. It meant chase them to the marked trails. Tay understood immediately. He barked to the pack and they shifted formation. Quan and Minji charged at the left tunneler, not to fight but to drive it back. The creature turned and followed them, angry and aggressive. The two young rippers led it straight toward one of the deep pits Day had dug. At the last moment, they leaped aside. The tunneler, with its poor eyesight and heavy body, fell into the pit with a thunderous crash. The right tunneler roared and charged at Bomb and Hana. They ran, leading it through the warning chimes. The sound confused the tunneler, making it hesitate. That hesitation was enough. The creature stepped on one of the covered pits and crashed through. That left the lead tunneler facing Tay and Day alone. The creature was smart. It had seen what happened to the others. It moved slowly, carefully, testing each step. Tay and Day circled it from opposite sides. Day held his spear ready, though he knew it would barely scratch the thick armor. Tay's claws were extended, gleaming in the afternoon light. The tunneler lunged at Day, seeing him as the weaker target. Day dove aside and rolled. The creature's jaws snapped shut where he had been standing a moment before. Tay used the distraction. He leaped onto the tunneler's back and dug his claws into the gaps between armor plates. The creature screamed and bucked, trying to throw him off. Day saw his chance. The tunneler's throat was exposed as it thrashed. He ran forward and drove his spear upward with all his strength. The wooden tip found soft flesh and sank deep. The tunneler collapsed. Tay jumped clear as it fell, landing next to Day. Both of them were breathing hard. The pack emerged from their positions, checking on each other. Quan had a small cut on his leg. Minji's scales were scratched. But everyone was alive. The two tunnelers in the pits were still thrashing but could not climb out. Eventually they would tire and could be finished safely. Tay approached Day and pressed his head against the human's chest. It was a gesture of gratitude and respect. Day wrapped his arms around the big ripper's neck. "We did it," Day said. "Together." The pack gathered around them, making sounds of victory and relief. Even the juveniles bounced excitedly, not fully understanding what had happened but knowing it was good. That night, the whole pack slept in a pile near Day's camp. Day sat with his back against Tay's warm side, watching the stars. Sora had brought the cubs out, letting them explore under careful supervision. One of the tiny cubs climbed onto Day's lap and fell asleep there. He stroked the cub's soft scales and felt a deep sense of peace. This was more than friendship now. This was family. In the monitoring station, every instructor was watching Day's screen. They had witnessed the battle. They had seen a human and rippers fight side by side against a common enemy. "This will change everything," Administrator Hana said quietly. "Our entire understanding of this planet, of rippers, of survival itself." Instructor Vel nodded slowly. "The human has shown us that we were never in conflict with the apex predators. We were simply too ignorant to see them as potential allies." "He has 7 more days," another instructor noted. "What do you think he will do?" Vel smiled. "With this human, anything is possible." The transport ship hummed as it cut through space toward planet Vorus 7. Inside the cargo bay, 200 students from 47 different species waited in nervous silence. Some had scales, some had feathers. Others glowed with soft light from their crystalline bodies. They all wore the same gray uniform of the Galactic Survival Academy. Kang Day sat alone in the corner, his human features making him stand out. He was the only one of his kind in the entire class. While the other students whispered to each other, or checked their equipment for the 10th time, Day simply looked out the window at the approaching planet. A small smile played on his lips. "Attention, students." The voice of Instructor Vel boomed through the speakers. The reptilian alien walked into the cargo bay, his 6 arms crossed behind his back. His scales were dark green, and his eyes were cold yellow slits. "We are approaching the drop zone. Listen carefully. Your lives depend on it." The room fell completely silent. "Planet Vorus 7 is classified as a Class 9 death world," Vel continued. His tail swished behind him as he spoke. "The final exam is simple. Survive for 30 days. You must build a shelter. You must find food. And most important of all, you must avoid the rippers." Several students gasped. Day noticed a female student with blue feathers named Nari gripping her seat tightly. Next, to her, a male crystalline student called Yun's glow dimmed with worry. "The rippers are apex predators," Vel said. "They hunt in packs. They have claws that can cut through military armor. They have never been tamed or trained. If you see a ripper, you run. If you cannot run, you hide. If you cannot hide, you pray to whatever gods your species believes in. Vel's yellow eyes swept across the room. 70% of students complete this exam. 20% require early extraction due to injury. 10%. He paused. Well, we try not to talk about them. Day's smile grew a bit wider. Yun noticed and leaned toward him. Human, why do you smile? Are you not afraid? Should I be? Day asked calmly. This is the hardest exam in the academy, Yun said, his crystalline body flickering with orange worry colors. Students have died here. My people have been warriors for 10,000 years, and even we fear the Rippers. Day shrugged. Where I come from, we had predators too. We learned to deal with them. Your planet had creatures like Rippers? Nari asked, her blue feathers ruffling. Worse, probably, Day said. We called them bears, tigers, crocodiles, sharks. We lived with them for millions of years. And how did your people survive? Yun asked. We figured them out, Day said simply. Before anyone could ask more questions, the ship shuddered. Red lights flashed throughout the cargo bay. Drop pods ready, Vel announced. Each of you will be placed in a random location on the main continent. You will be 50 kilometers from the nearest student. You have a basic survival pack, an emergency beacon for extraction, and your training. That is all. The floor beneath them split into sections. Each student stood on a circular platform that would become their drop pod. Remember the rules, Vel said. Build shelter, find food, avoid predators, survive 30 days. The exam begins the moment you land. May fortune favor the strong. The platforms began to drop one by one. Students shouted goodbyes to their friends. Some prayed. Others checked their equipment one final time. Day stood calmly as his platform descended into his drop pod. The metal walls closed around him, and he felt the pod detach from the ship. For a moment, there was weightlessness. Then came the burning heat of atmospheric entry. The pod shook violently. Day braced himself against the walls. Through the small window, he watched the planet grow larger. Green forests stretched as far as he could see. Mountains rose in the distance. Rivers cut through valleys like silver veins. The parachutes deployed with a loud bang. The pod's descent slowed. Day felt his stomach drop as they fell the last few hundred meters. Then came the impact. The pod hit the ground hard. Day was thrown against the straps that held him. Warning lights flashed. The door hissed open and bright sunlight flooded in. Day grabbed his survival pack and stepped out. He stood in a deep ravine surrounded by tall trees. The forest canopy blocked most of the sky. Thick roots twisted across the ground. Somewhere nearby, water rushed over rocks. The air smelled of damp earth and strange flowers. This is supposed to be one of the most dangerous zones, Day said to himself. He looked around, taking in every detail. Perfect. He pulled a small device from his pack and pressed a button. A hologram appeared, showing a map of the area. A red dot marked his location. The map also showed heat signatures of nearby life forms. Most were small, but about 2 kilometers to the north, there were larger signatures. Much larger. Rippers, Day said. He studied the pattern of their movement. Hunting party. 5 of them. They follow the river because that is where the prey goes. He switched off the device and shouldered his pack. While other students would spend hours just finding a safe place to rest, Day already had a plan. His human eyes scanned the ravine, processing information faster than most aliens could. He spotted a rock overhang near the water. Good shelter from rain, high ground to see approaching danger, close to fresh water. The roots of a massive tree created a natural wall on one side. That will work, he decided. Day walked to the location and dropped his pack. He pulled out a small knife, the only tool the academy allowed. While his classmates had grown up with technology that could do everything for them, Day had spent his childhood camping in Earth's wilderness with his grandfather. He knew how to work with his hands. He gathered fallen branches and began constructing a basic frame for his shelter. He used vines to tie the branches together, creating a technique called lashing. His grandfather had taught him this when he was 8 years old. As he worked, Day listened to the forest. Every sound told him something. Birds meant no immediate danger. Silence meant predators nearby. The wind carried scents that gave him information about weather changes. High above, satellites watched. In the Academy's monitoring station, dozens of instructors observed all 200 students on multiple screens. One instructor pointed at Day's screen. "The human is already building shelter," she said, surprised. "Most students are still looking for a safe location." Instructor Vel leaned closer to the screen. "Interesting. Most humans in the Academy struggle with physical challenges. They are not as strong as most species. But they adapt quickly," another instructor noted. "Look at his technique. He is using primitive methods, but they are efficient." "Let us see how he handles his first night," Vel said. "The Rippers hunt after dark." On the planet below, Day had no idea he was being watched so closely. He simply continued his work, the way his grandfather had taught him. Build shelter. Find water. Secure food. Everything else would come naturally. The sun was beginning to set when he finished the basic structure. Day stepped back and examined his work. It was not pretty, but it was solid. It would keep him dry and hidden. "Day 1, shelter complete," Day said. He looked toward the north where the Ripper pack was still hunting. "Tomorrow I will go introduce myself." If the Academy instructors had heard him say that, they would have thought he was crazy. No one introduced themselves to Rippers. No one even wanted to see Rippers, but Day was human, and humans had a very different idea about predators. The morning sun broke through the forest canopy in golden streams. Day had been awake for 2 hours already. His shelter now had a roof made of woven leaves that would shed rain. He had dug a small trench around it to channel water away. Inside, he had created a raised bed using moss and soft branches. While he worked, he had also set up 3 deadfall traps using heavy rocks balanced on sticks. His grandfather had shown him this method for catching small animals. Simple but effective. In the Academy monitoring station, Instructor Vel stared at Day's screen with his arms crossed. Around him, other instructors whispered to each other. "Check the timestamp," one instructor said. "It has only been 18 hours since the drop." "The human already has a completed shelter, water purification system, and traps," another added. "Most students are still eating their ration bars." On the screen, Day was using 2 sticks to create friction fire. The other instructors watched in confusion as smoke began to rise from the dried wood shavings he had prepared. "What is he doing?" someone asked. "Why does he not use the fire starter from his pack?" I think he is making fire with only wood," Vel said slowly. Without any tools, a small flame appeared. Day carefully fed it with dry grass and small twigs. Soon he had a proper fire burning. He placed stones around it in a circle to contain it safely. "Impossible," an instructor whispered. "That is a primitive technique. It takes skill and knowledge that most species lost thousands of years ago." Vel's eyes narrowed. "This human is different from the others we have trained. Keep watching him closely." Back on the planet, Day was cooking mushrooms he had found growing on a fallen tree. He had tested them first by rubbing a small piece on his skin to check for reactions. When nothing happened, he had tasted a tiny amount. No burning or numbness, safe to eat. His pack also contained protein bars and water tablets, but Day wanted to save those for emergencies. Besides, he had always preferred fresh food. After eating, Day stood and stretched. He looked toward the north, where he had seen the Ripper heat signatures yesterday. It was time. He filled a water container and tied it to his belt. He took 3 protein bars from his pack and put them in his pockets. Then he began walking north, following the river. Most students would avoid the Rippers at all costs. But Day had learned something important from his grandfather. Predators were not monsters. They were animals with behaviors and patterns. If you understood them, you could predict them. And if you could predict them, you could live alongside them. The forest grew denser as he walked. Large animal tracks marked the soft earth near the water. Day knelt and examined them. 4 toed prints, each toe ending in a sharp claw mark. Deep impressions meant the creatures were heavy. The stride length suggested they were fast. Rippers, Day confirmed. He touched the tracks. Still fresh, made within the last few hours. He continued following the trail. About 30 minutes later, he heard something. A low huffing sound like a large dog breathing. Day stopped and crouched behind a bush. Through the leaves, he saw them. 3 rippers stood near the water's edge. They were massive, each one at least 2 meters tall at the shoulder. Their bodies were covered in dark scales that gleamed like armor. Sharp spines ran along their backs. Their heads were long and narrow, filled with teeth that looked like knives. The claws on their feet were easily 20 centimeters long, but Day did not look at their weapons. He looked at their behavior. The largest ripper, clearly the leader, was drinking from the river. The other 2 waited behind it, not drinking yet. That meant a hierarchy, a pack structure. The leader ate and drank first. One of the smaller rippers made a soft chirping sound. The leader responded with a lower rumbling call. They were communicating. Not just predators, Day whispered to himself. Social hunters. Like wolves. Like humans. The leader suddenly raised its head. Its nostrils flared. It had caught Day's scent. All 3 rippers turned toward his hiding spot. Their eyes were amber-colored and very intelligent. They did not immediately attack. Instead, they watched him with curiosity. Day slowly stood up, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. He did not make direct eye contact, which many predators saw as a challenge. He kept his body turned slightly to the side, appearing non-threatening. The rippers began to spread out, moving to surround him. This was a hunting formation. They were testing him to see if he would run. Prey ran. Prey panicked. Day did neither. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar. He slowly unwrapped it, the sound of the packaging crinkling in the quiet forest. The rippers paused, confused by this strange behavior. Day broke off a piece of the protein bar and tossed it gently toward the leader. It landed in the space between them. The leader ripper tilted its head, clearly puzzled. It approached the food cautiously, sniffed it, then picked it up in its jaws. It chewed once, then swallowed. The creature made a surprised sound, almost like a pleased grunt. The protein bar was concentrated nutrients, designed to be appealing to most life forms. Day tossed another piece, this time to one of the smaller rippers. Then another to the third. In the monitoring station, alarms were going off. The human has encountered rippers, an instructor shouted. 3 of them! Should we prepare for extraction? Vel held up one hand for silence. His eyes were locked on the screen. Wait, look at what he is doing. He is feeding them. Someone asked in disbelief. He has lost his mind, another instructor said. They will attack any moment, but the rippers did not attack. Instead, the leader took 2 steps closer to Day, watching him carefully. Its body language was not aggressive. It was curious. Day broke off another piece and held it out on his flat palm like feeding a horse. The leader approached slowly, sniffed his hand, then gently took the food. This close, Day could see the details. Old scars marked the creature's scales. Its amber eyes were alert and thoughtful. This was not a mindless killing machine. This was a survivor just like him. You are beautiful, Day said softly. The ripper made a low rumbling sound that was almost like a purr. Day gave the last of his protein bars to the 3 rippers. Then he slowly backed away, keeping his movements calm. The rippers watched him go but did not follow. When Day was about 20 meters away, the leader made a sharp barking sound. Day stopped and turned. The creature was looking at him with what could only be described as interest. I will come back tomorrow, Day told it. Same time. Same place. The ripper huffed once, then turned and walked back to the river. The other 2 followed. Day returned to his camp with a racing heart and a huge smile. He had just done something no one in the academy had ever done. He had made peaceful contact with rippers. That night, while other students huddled in makeshift shelters, jumping at every sound, Day slept peacefully. He had food, water, shelter, and the beginning of something remarkable. By day 3, he had expanded his camp significantly. He built a smoking rack to preserve meat from animals caught in his traps. He created a water filtration system using sand, charcoal, and cloth. He even started a small garden with edible plants he had found, and every morning he visited the rippers by the river. Each time he brought food. Each time they seemed a little less wary and a little more interested. The leader, which Day had started calling Tay, now approached him directly. The other 2, which he named Bom and Hana, would sit nearby and watch. In the monitoring station, Instructor Vel could not believe what he was seeing. Other students were struggling, calling for help, barely surviving. But the human was thriving. More than that, he was creating something unprecedented. This changes everything, Vel said quietly. Another instructor shook her head. Or he gets killed. and we learn nothing. No, Vel said, watching Dee gently touch Tay's scaled head while the massive predator rumbled contentedly. I do not think he will be killed. I think he is showing us that we have been wrong about these creatures all along. On the planet below, Day scratched behind Tay's spines, right where the creature could not reach on its own. Tay's eyes closed in pleasure. Good boy, Day said, smiling. Good boy. By day 10, Day had learned that Rippers were far more complex than anyone at the Academy understood. They were not mindless killers. They were intelligent, social creatures with their own language and culture. Every morning, Day sat by the river and listened to them communicate. They had different sounds for different situations. A high-pitched bark meant danger. A low rumble meant contentment. A series of short huffs was like laughter. A long, drawn-out howl was a call to gather the pack. Day began practicing these sounds himself. At first, his attempts were clumsy. Tay would tilt his head in confusion and Bomb would make that huffing laugh sound. But slowly, Day improved. One morning he tried the low rumble that meant greeting. Tay's eyes widened in surprise. The large Ripper responded with the same sound, then approached and gently bumped Day's shoulder with his head. We are talking, Day said, grinning. We are actually talking. In the monitoring station, more instructors had gathered around Day's screen. Word had spread through the Academy about the human who was befriending Rippers. Some thought it was fascinating. Others thought it was dangerous and foolish. He should be focusing on survival, one instructor argued, not playing with apex predators. Look at his camp, Vel pointed at the screen. His shelter is better than most permanent structures. He has enough food stored for months. He has water, fire, tools. He has survived better than 90% of the other students. Now he is learning, but why? Another instructor asked. Why risk his life for this? Vel smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Because he is human. They cannot help themselves. They must understand everything. On the planet, Day had discovered something else. The Ripper pack was not just 3 members. Tay was the alpha, the leader, but there were 4 more Rippers that belonged to his pack. They lived in a den about 1 kilometer north. Day found the den on day 12. It was a large cave carved into a hillside. Outside he saw the other pack members. 2 were young adults, probably offspring from previous years. 2 were juveniles, still growing into their full size. When Day approached, the young adults immediately positioned themselves between him and the juveniles. Protective, defensive, just like human parents. Tay emerged from the den and made a series of sounds. The young adults relaxed. Tay had told them that Day was safe. One of the juveniles, braver than the other, crept forward to sniff Day. It was curious about this strange, soft creature that smelled like smoke and river water. Day held still and let the young Ripper investigate. The juvenile made a squeaking sound and pawed at Day's leg. Not aggressive, playful. You want to play? Day asked. He picked up a stick and tossed it. The juvenile bounded after it, grabbed it in his jaws and brought it back. Just like a puppy. Day laughed and threw the stick again. Soon both juveniles were playing fetch with him, while the adults watched. Tay approached and sat next to Day. The massive Ripper was close enough that Day could feel the warmth from his scaled body. You have a good family, Day said, scratching behind Tay's spines. They are lucky to have you. Tay made a deep, contented rumble. That afternoon, Day witnessed something that changed his understanding completely. He was walking back to his camp when he heard sounds of fighting. Roaring, screaming, the crash of bodies hitting trees. Day ran toward the noise. Through the trees, he saw Tay's pack surrounding something massive. It was a creature Day had never seen before, easily 4 meters long, with 6 legs and a thick armored shell. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with rows of grinding teeth. The creature had come from underground. A tunnel entrance gaped open behind it. This was a tunneler, Day realized. Something even more dangerous than Rippers. The tunneler lunged at one of the young adults. Bomb leaped in the way, taking a blow that sent her tumbling. She got up quickly, shook herself, and attacked again. Tay coordinated the pack with barks and growls. They worked together, attacking from different angles, wearing the tunneler down. It was organized, strategic, beautiful. Finally, Tay landed a blow directly to the tunneler's soft throat. The creature collapsed and stopped moving. The pack gathered around their kill, huffing and checking each other for injuries. Bomb had a gash along her side, but it was not deep. The juveniles were unharmed. Then Tay noticed Day standing at the edge of the clearing. For a moment, they stared at each other. Then Tay barked once and jerked his head toward the tunneler's body. It was an invitation. Share the kill, Day understood then. The Rippers were not attacking students because they were aggressive. They were protecting their territory from tunnelers. The Academy had dropped students right into the middle of a war between two apex predators. You have been defending us, Day said quietly. All along you have been keeping these things away from the drop zones. Tay huffed in response as if to say, of course. Day walked to his camp with new understanding. That night he did not sleep in his shelter. Instead, he built a large fire and kept it burning bright. Fire would keep tunnelers away. They were subterranean creatures that avoided heat and light. Around midnight, he heard movement outside his camp. 3 shapes appeared in the darkness. Tay, Bam, and Hana Day stood slowly. Is something wrong? Tay approached the fire, sniffed it, then lay down near its warmth. The other 2 did the same. They positioned themselves around Day's camp in a protective circle. They were guarding him while he slept. Thank you, Day said softly. He sat by the fire and watched the stars. The Ripper's breathing became slow and steady. They trusted him enough to sleep near him. In the morning, Day woke to find the Rippers still there. Tay was awake, watching the forest with alert eyes. When Day stirred, the Big Ripper looked at him and made a soft chirping sound. Good morning, Day chirped back. Tay's eyes seemed to brighten with approval. Over the next few days, Day began spending more time at the den. He helped the pack in small ways. He showed them how to dig pit traps that could catch smaller prey. He created simple tools from branches that helped them reach into burrows. The Rippers learned quickly. They began using his techniques in their own hunts. Day watched in amazement as Tay used a long stick to probe a burrow, just as Day had shown him. You are brilliant, Day told the Big Ripper. All of you. You learn so fast. By day 18, the pack had accepted Day completely. The juveniles followed him around like puppies. The adults brought him food from their hunts. Tay's mate, a scarred female D named Sora, even allowed him to meet her cubs. There were 2 tiny cubs, barely as big as house cats, still too young to leave the den. They had oversized paws and bright, curious eyes. When Day reached out slowly, one of them sniffed his hand and licked it with a rough tongue. Sora watched carefully but did not stop him. This was the ultimate sign of trust. She was allowing him near her most vulnerable pack members. Day sat in the den with the Ripper family around him, and he felt something he had not expected. He felt at home. In the monitoring station, Instructor Vel watched the scene with all 6 of his arms crossed. An administrator named Hana stood next to him, her face unreadable. This is not survival, Hana said quietly. This is colonization. The human has not just survived. He has integrated into the planet's ecosystem. He has done what we thought was impossible, Vel agreed. He has proven that Rippers are not mindless beasts. They are intelligent, social, and capable of cooperation with other species. The Academy will want to study this, Hana said. Let him finish the exam first, Vel replied. I want to see what else he can accomplish. On the planet below, Day had no idea that he was being discussed at the highest levels of the Academy. He was too busy teaching the juveniles how to play a new game, while Tay watched with what could only be described as amusement. For Day, this was not about passing an exam anymore. It was about building something real, a bridge between species, a friendship that crossed all boundaries, and he was only halfway through the 30 days.